We'll now look at some of the basics of solving word problems. And when we solve word problems, there's 5 steps that we should generally do. The first step would be to read the problem. And this seems like the most obvious step, but it's often the most overlooked step. When we say read the problem, most people immediately start thinking about how to solve the problem as they're reading it, but that's not what this step is about. Instead, we just need to read the problem without thinking about what to do next. So just read it through and kind of get a feel for it without actually thinking about how to solve it or what to do. The second step is then to identify the variable. Try to figure out what it is the problem's asking you to find and introduce some notation for any unknown variables like x or any other letter. So just try to figure out exactly what it is that we're asking and what it is that we need to define as our variable. Step 3 is then to organize the information. There's lots of ways we can do this. The main thing is to determine what it is that you know and express these values in terms of the variable. It might be helpful for us to draw a diagram or make a table or really just kind of list out the things that we know. It really depends on the situation. Step 4 is then to write the equation. Use the information given in the problem to write some kind of equation. This equation could come directly from the problem or it could come from formulas that we know. So the last step is to solve the problem. So solve the equation that you found in step 4 and then check the answer. Make sure it makes sense in terms of the problem. And then we can express our answer in terms of the problem. So let's look at a few basic word problems to model these steps. A particular moving truck costs $20 per day and 10 cents per mile to rent. Ben rents a truck for 2 days and the total bill is $54. How many miles did he drive the truck? The first step is to read the problem, which we just did. The second step is then to identify the variable. So the last question asks, how many miles did he drive? So that's what it is we're trying to figure out. So we'll define that variable to be x. The third step is then to organize the information. So let's look at what we have. We know the number of miles of driven is x. The mileage cost, well, we know it costs 10 cents per mile and he drove x miles. So the mileage cost would be 0.1x. And then we also have a daily cost. We know the truck cost $20 per day and Ben rented the truck for 2 days. And then the other piece of information we have is the total bill was $54. Now that we've organized our information, let's set up the model. The basic formula we need here is that we need to pay for the mileage and the daily costs, and if we add those together, we should get the total cost. We know the mileage cost is 0.1x, and the daily cost was 2 times 20. The total cost is 54. So now we can start simplifying and solving this equation. Multiplying 2 times 20 gives me 40. We can then subtract 40 from both sides. And that leaves us with 0.1x equal to 14. We divide both sides by 0.1. And that gives us that x is equal to 140. So Ben drove a total of 140 miles in the moving truck. Let's do one more example. A particular company charges $15 per month for 2 gigabytes of data and $3.50 for each additional gigabyte of data. Percy's bill at the end of the month was $22.50. So how much data did she use? So we've read the problem. We wanted to find our variable. What we're looking for is the amount of data used. We'll let x be equal to the total data used. Next, let's organize our information. Our first 2 gigabytes of data don't get charged. Only what comes after 2 gigabytes. So the excess data used is going to be x minus 2, everything over 2. That gets charged depending on how much we have, so we need to look at the cost of the excess data. So the excess data cost is 3.5, the cost for each additional gigabyte, times however many gigabytes we used beyond the 2. We also have a base cost for the first 2 gigabytes of data. The base data cost is $15. And the final thing we have is her total bill, which is $22.50 or 22.5. So now that we've organized all of our information, let's set up our model. The basic formula or idea we need is that the base cost plus the excess cost is going to be equal to the total cost. Well, we have all of those in this list of data over here to the left, so we just need to fill in our information. So we have 15 plus 3.5 times x minus 2 is equal to 22.5. We're going to start by distributing our parentheses. That gives us 15 plus 3.5x minus 7 is equal to 22.5. We can then combine the 15 and the 7. That gives us 8 plus 3.5x is equal to 22.5. We can then subtract 8 from both sides. That gives us 14.5. We then divide both sides by 3.5. And that gives us x is 4.14. So she used about 4.14 gigabytes of data.